The first scream echoed across the stars. But it was not human. It rippled through the Vhalar expanse, a frequency older than empires, carried on tendrils of bioluminescent spores that drifted between dying suns. The galactic air heard it in her marrow, a song that split her dreams into fractals. They called it Cythera, a sentient symbiote forged in the crucible of a black hole's death throes. It chose her, they said. A honor, a cage. By dawn, she fled her coral-threaded palace, its halls humming with the lies of diplomats. The symbiote's prismatic light bled through her skin as her ship breached the atmosphere of a nameless, war-torn world. Below, forests of writhing blackwoods clawed at the sky, their roots fed on the bones of fallen civilizations. The crash scattered Cythera's spores like dying stars, seeding the soil with whispers. What awoke was not peace. Beneath Vhalar's twin moons, a scavenger knelt to drink from a glowing pool, and felt his mind unravel. A mercenary's scarred palm brushed a bioluminescent vine, and for a heartbeat, she knew the fear of the soldier she'd killed. The symbiote did not discriminate. It threaded itself through cracks in the soul, amplifying what festered: rage, hope, the desperate need to survive. In the silence between heartbeats, the air pressed a hand to her chest, the crystal there throbbing like a second pulse. Cythera murmured of evolution, of unity. But the wind carried screams, not of pain, but transformation. Some bonds are not forged, they are unleashed, and Vhalar would learn the price of both. Chapter 1. The stars wept light as Princess Zorine Avaris plunged through the atmosphere of Vhalar, her palace ship groaning like a dying leviathan. Bioluminescent coral plating scorched away in the descent, raining embers over the planet's jagged canopy. She gripped the symbiote crystal embedded in her sternum. Cythera, its pulsations syncing with her racing heart. You promised evolution, not annihilation. The entity's voice coiled through her mind, cool and fractal. Adaptation requires fracture. Observe. Through the cracked viewport, Vhalar's forests revealed themselves, towering blackwoods veined with luminous sap, their branches clawing upward as if to pull the sky into the soil. The ship struck earth. Metal screamed. Zorine's skull cracked against the console, blood flecking the symbiotic growths that writhed across the controls. Cythera's spores bloomed in the air, iridescent, hungry. Somewhere beyond the wreckage, voices rose. Human, but warped by static. Scavengers. She staggered from the cockpit, her ceremonial robes fused to her skin by the symbiote's emergency seal. The air tasted of burnt honey and ionized rage. Mayan Kaden Vorsk watched the firestorm from the ridge, his breath fogging the cracked lens of his binoculars. The crash had torn a scar through the forest, uprooting biolume fungi that now floated like drowned lanterns in the smoke. His rebels crouched behind him, a ragged dozen with plasma cutters and scavenged railguns. Drakon, muttered Rel, her scarred face twitching. Too ornate for Dominion tech. Kaden's gloved hand brushed the fracture lines on his left vambrace, a relic from the day he'd abandoned his post, his battalion's screams still echoing in his dreams. But someone important just became very unlucky. They descended into the crater. The ship's hull shimmered with half-alive coral, its pockmarks oozing translucent gel. Kaden's boots sank into the mud, each step releasing bursts of methane stink. Another rich fool's grave. Nothing changes. Inside, they found her. Zorine pressed herself against the organic bulkhead, Cythera coiling tendrils through her veins. The scavengers fanned out, their weapons glinting. One tall, lean, with eyes like smelted iron, stepped forward. His gaze lingered on her crystal. Royalty, he said, voice sandpapered by cynicism. Let me guess you're here to enlighten the barbarians. She straightened, letting her torn robes cascade. I am Princess Zorine Avaris, bound to the Cythera symbiote. My ship's destruction was unintended. The man snorted. Unintended? You dropped a palace on a war zone. What's intended? Cythera surged through her, casting azure light across his face. His pupils contracted. Fear, fascination. The symbiote seeks symbiosis, not subjugation. Your people could. My people are dead, he snapped. Or haven't you smelled the pyres? Kaden didn't shackle her. Let her think it mercy. He led the group through the corpse-gray ferns, Rel prodding the princess with a rifle. The woman walked like a queen still, her alien jewelry glinting, but her hands trembled. Guilt, radiation sickness. He spat into the ash. Night fell spectral. The forest's bioluminescence intensified, painting the refugees' faces in swamp green and violet. Kaden's hideout loomed ahead, a derelict ore processor buried beneath calcified roots. The princess paused, staring at the graffiti. Asian will rise. You resist the surface factions. We survive them. He yanked open the rusted door. You'll be traded to whoever pays best. Try to enlighten them. Her laugh startled him. Bitter, resonant. You think me a pacifist? I've killed more politely than you've scavenged. Mayab Zorine studied her captor in the flicker of fungal lamps. His rebel armor bore the ghost of military precision, but his hands were a mechanic's grease-stained restless. Cythera whispered, trauma fractalizes the soul. Observe the patterns. She reached psychically, brushing his aura. Smoke and screams, a child's doll melting in plasma fire. His own voice howling, abandon post, abandon, abandon. He recoiled, blade at her throat. Do that again. I carve your crystal out. Apologies. She smiled, blood trickling where the steel kissed skin. Your pain is loud. 3 days passed. The rebels avoided her, whispering of Dracon patrols sighted near the crash site. Only Kaden would share his rations, watching her chew moss bread with regal poise. Why flee your gilded cage? Prince Corvain believes marriage unites empires. I believe it breeds slower poison. She touched her crystal. Cythera's spores can evolve a civilization. He'd weaponize it. And you're different? I'm learning. That night, she dreamt of coral cities breathing in unison. Kaden dreamt of the doll, its glass eyes cracking. The bombardment began at dawn. Plasma fire ignited the canopy. Kaden shoved Zorine against the processor's wall as the ceiling collapsed. Dracon, she shouted over the roar. Worse, he hauled her through a fissure. Corvain found you. Above, a warship carved the clouds. Obsidian hull, tentacle-like cannons. The princess's chest ached. He came for the symbiote, not me. Kaden's rebels scattered, vaporized mid-sprint. Rel's corpse smoldered in the mud. He froze, the past overlapping the present. Abandon post abandon. Zorine gripped his wrist. Your guilt won't resurrect them. Move. They fled into the glowing woods, the ground erupting behind them. In the fungal caves, she collapsed. Cythera's spores swirled in her blood, healing fractures, deepening the bond. Kaden crouched nearby, reloading his pistol. Your symbiote's changing the air. My scouts saw a Lumen Rider phase through a tree. Evolution requires fracture, yeah. He glared. You're a bomb, princess, and I'm tired of burning. She unclasped her brooch, a coral starburst, and pressed it into his palm. Then detonate me wisely. Outside, the forest wailed. Corvain's drones scoured the dark. Kaden pocketed the brooch. We head north. The Ashran tunnels might shield us. From him, or your conscience. He didn't answer. By midnight, they reached the Ashran border. Geothermal vents cast hellish shadows across the sulfur pits. Kaden disabled a sentry turret with brutal efficiency. He's fought here before, Zorine realized. Fled here before, Cythera hissed. She turned. Corvain's assassin descended silently, monofilament blade raised. Kaden tackled her aside. The blade severed his vambrace. He shot the assassin point blank, face splattered with viscera. Still think evolution's peaceful? Zorine touched his shattered armor. No, but neither is survival. The ground trembled. Warship engines howled. They ran. Chapter 2. The Ashran tunnels were a crypt of echoes. Zorine's breath misted in the sterile air as she followed Kaden through the winding passages, her boots crunching over salt rime and fractured quartz. The walls hummed with subsonic vibrations, a low ceaseless drone meant to sever psionic threads. Cythera recoiled inside her, its spores retreating from the anti-symbiotic frequencies. They built their sanctuary on silence, the entity murmured, its voice frayed. Fear is an architect of isolation. She trailed her fingers along the vibrating stone, the chill seeping into her bones. Ahead, Kaden's silhouette flickered in the sulphurous glow of his lantern, his movements precise, mechanical, as if the tunnels had already turned him to stone. They emerged into a cavern, where stalactites wept luminous algae, greenish tears pooling in basins that reflected the vaulted ceiling like shattered glass. Ashran sentries materialized from shadow, their rebreathers hissing, rifles studded with crude neural disruptors. One stepped forward, his voice distorted by a vox grill. Vorsk, you swore ash and blood you'd never return. Kaden's hand hovered near his holstered pistol. Circumstances fossilize promises. The sentry's lensed gaze shifted to Zorine. And you drag a bioweapon into our veins. Cythera surged defensively, casting azure light across the cavern. She steadied her pulse, the symbiote's tendrils tightening around her ribs. I carry dialogue, not contagion. Your fear distorts what you don't understand. Understanding requires surrender, the sentry said. We prefer dissonance. The Ashran stronghold was a cathedral of absence. Zorine sat cross-legged in her cell, a hollow geode vibrating with anti-Psionic resonance. Cythera huddled in her marrow, its whispers dimmed. Through the fractured crystal walls, she sensed the Lumen Riders above ground, their minds bright and frayed, tethered to the spores she'd unleashed. One burned hotter than the others, a boy, his thoughts barbed with grief. She brushed his psyche lightly, a sister's laughter dissolving into ash, a Drakon convoy exploding in the glassed plains, the sweet rot stench of her corpse. Zorine recoiled, her throat tightening. Footsteps echoed. Kaden leaned in the doorway, tossing her a protein wafer. They'll vote at dawn, either sell you to Corvain, or dissect you for parts. She caught the wafer, her fingers grazing his. And your vote? I'm a ghost here. Ghosts don't vote. He lingered, his gaze snagging on her symbiote crystal. The Lumen Riders are attacking supply lines. Using your gift. It's not a weapon, it's a bridge. He crouched, sudden and feral. Bridges get burned. Night bled through the caverns like ink. Zorine slipped past sentries, Cythera dampening her heat signature. The tunnels branched into catacombs, shelves stacked with urns labeled by coordinates, not names. No symbiosis, no shared memory, only dust and data. Her chest ached. She pressed deeper, drawn by muffled voices. Kaden stood in a war room, holographic maps etching shadows on his face. The Ashran commander, a gaunt woman with neural scars, stabbed a finger at the projections. Your princess is a detonator. Remove her, and the storm dies. And if Corvain glasses the tunnels anyway. Kaden's knuckles whitened around a data spike. Your principles won't stop plasma fire. We've survived purges before. By hiding, by letting others burn. His voice cracked, the old wound raw. He argues for me, Zorine realized. Or against the man he was. She retreated, but not before glimpsing the holomap. A Drakon warship hovering over the glassed plains, its shadow a stain on the obsidian wasteland. The vote failed by one. At dawn the Ashran exiled them with a parting gift, a bio-tagged grenade. Detonate her beyond our thresholds, the commander said. Kaden clipped it to his belt, his face stone. They surfaced into a mutated forest. Bioluminescent fungi spiraled up the blackwoods, their glow pulsing in sync. Kaden scanned the canopy. Lumen Riders hunt psionic surges. They'll find us. Good, Zorine said. I'd rather speak than explode. He smirked. You'll regret both. The riders came at dusk. Figures phased through the trees, crackling with unstable energy. The boy from her vision stepped forward, his face scarred by plasma burns. You infected us. Fix it. Cythera reached instinctively. Zorine staggered under the onslaught. A sister's corpse, a Drakon soldier's smirk, the hollow click of an empty rifle. She gripped his wrist. Your amplifiers, not victims. Let me show you control. He wrenched free. We're not your experiments. Kaden stepped between them, pistol raised. She dies, your storm becomes a hurricane. Want that gamble? Silence hummed. The boy lowered his rifle. 3 days, then we vote. They camped in a derelict observatory, its shattered dome framing the nebula. Kaden dismantled the grenade. You trust them, as much as you trust me. He laughed brittle. That's a funeral prayer, not a plan. She watched spores swirl in her palm. Evolution needs risk. Evolution's just death with better branding. The riders taught her their fractures. Zorine moved among them, Cythera weaving a fragile psionic web. An elder's skin fused with fungal armor. A girl who tasted memories like poison. The boy Jarek, whose sister's ghost clawed at his dreams. Each connection softened the symbiote's light from azure to silver. They're remaking it, she realized. Not the other way. Kaden watched from the shadows, cleaning his pistol. When Jarek let her quell his nightmares, Kaden muttered, You're better at this than war. Empathy is the war, she said. No, empathy's what's left when the guns cool. Neas Corvain struck on the third day. Dropships vomited drones. Riders scattered. Psionic shields flaring. Kaden shoved Zorine behind a pillar. This your evolution? No, this is fear's echo. She gripped his arm. The spores need a conduit. If I merge with the mycelium, you'll burn alive. Or light a path. He stared, then pressed her palm to the earth. Make it hurt. Cythera surged. Bioluminescent tendrils erupted, ensnaring drones. Zorine's mind frayed. Too many souls, too much rage, until Kaden's hand found hers, the grenade's core flaring in his belt. Now, she channeled the blast through the network. Light devoured the sky. Afterward, Jarek knelt in ashes, his rifle shattered. We voted. You live. Kaden laughed. Raw. Democracy's a knife fight. Zorine touched the boy's shoulder. Your sister hated martyrs. He stood trembling. But she'd hate the Drakon more. We'll fight, if you lead. The riders gathered, their storm humming. Cythera sang, but Zorine tasted dread. To lead is to sacrifice, always. That night, she found Kaden suturing a wound, his skin glistening with bioluminescent sweat. Without a word, she knelt, Cythera knitting his flesh. Their minds brushed. A doll's melting face, a coral throne cutting her palms. He gripped her wrist. Don't. You've seen my scars, she whispered. Let me see yours. His kiss was a collision. She tasted blood and ghosts. They parted. The grenade's core glinted, inert. This changes nothing, he said. Everything changes, she replied. Even silence. At dawn, Corvain's warship descended. Riders rallied, their storm crackling. Kaden strapped charges to his thighs. Ready? Zorine gazed at the coral spire now piercing the observatory. Cythera's new anchor. No, but I'm done choosing cages over currents. He smirked. Still a cultist. Artillery shook the earth. They ran. Chapter 3. The coral spire pierced the heavens like a bone-white lightning strike, its bioluminescent veins throbbing in time with Zorine's pulse. She stood at the edge of the glassed plains, the obsidian wasteland, reflecting Corvain's warships like vultures circling carrion. Cythera's spores hummed in her blood, restless, as if the symbiote too could taste the iron tang of impending storm. Kaden adjusted the plasma charges strapped to his thighs, his movements deliberate, his silence heavier than the ash-choked air. This is how empires fracture, she thought, not with grand proclamations, but with the quiet click of a rifle's safety disengaging. They retreated to the observatory, its shattered dome now crowned by the spire's spiraling growth. The Lumen Riders had woven psionic barriers from mycelium and starlight, their collective mind a tempest of fear and resolve. Jarek crouched beside a fractured telescope, his scarred face lit by the spire's glow. The network's unstable. Too many voices. Zorine pressed her palm to the coral floor, Cythera's roots threading through her veins. The symbiote needs a conduit, something to harmonize the dissonance. Kaden's boot scuffed the debris. Harmonize. Detonate. Same difference when you're underneath it. She met his gaze, the unspoken truth ablaze between them. One of us ends this. Night fell like a shroud. Zorine climbed the spire, its living coral warm beneath her palms. Below, the plains swarmed with Corvain's drones, their metallic carapaces glinting in the spire's auroral light. Cythera whispered of unity, of synapses firing in tandem, but her mind snagged on Kaden's absence. He lingered at the observatory's edge, a shadow sharpening knives. She found him at dawn, hunched over a gutted drone, its wires spilling like entrails. You don't have to watch me die, she said. He didn't look up. Watched enough people die. You'd think I'd be used to it. The spire pulsed, casting his face in jagged relief. She memorized the scar on his throat, the way his lashes lowered when he lied. The battle began at noon. Corvain's artillery turned the plains into a mosaic of fire and glass. Lumen Riders phased through the inferno, their psionic strikes ripping drones apart. But the warship's shadow deepened, its cannons charging. Zorine stood at the spire's base, Cythera's roots fusing with the earth. Focus. The mycelium, the riders, the Ashran hiding in their tunnels. A hand gripped her wrist. Kaden pressed the grenade's core into her palm, his fingers trembling. It's not enough, she understood. The core's code could amplify Cythera's signal, but the feedback would shred a human mind. "Your turn to survive," he said, and sprinted toward the spire's heart. The core's activation was a symphony of light and scream. Kaden's body arched, veins alight with azure fire, as Cythera's network exploded outward. The spire's coral branches unfurled, ensnaring the warship, its living tendrils seizing cannons mid-blast. Zorine fell to her knees, the psionic backlash of ice around her skull. Through the haze, she saw memories not her own. A child's doll abandoned in flames, a rebel's oath choked by smoke, her own face reflected in Kaden's eyes the moment before he shattered. Corvain's ship fissured, its hull dissolving into bioluminescent rain. The plains erupted in a cacophony of light, spores weaving a tapestry of connection. Lumen riders, Ashran, even the drones, all stilled, all one. She found him in the spire's core, breathing but vacant. Cythera's roots cradled Kaden's body, his mind a hollow chamber. Zorine traced the new fracture lines on his temples, her tears searing the coral. "You arrogant fool." His hand twitched, a reflex, nothing more. The Ashran emerged at dusk, their rebreathers discarded. The commander knelt beside Kaden, her scarred hands hovering. "We could bury him, give him coordinates." Zorine's laugh was a serrated thing. "He'd hate that." The commander stood, her voice softer. "Then let him hate it alive." They carried him to the observatory, now a cathedral of coral and starlight. Jarrett brought a vial of Lumen Rider's serum, his gaze averted. "It's unstable, might wake him, might kill him." Zorine pressed the vial to Kaden's lips. He'd prefer the risk. The serum's glow flooded his veins. His eyes opened empty, then flickering. Weeks passed. The spire thrived, its roots knitting the fractured earth. Zorine walked the plains each dawn, Kaden's silence a companion. He relearned the weight of a pistol, the scent of bioluminescent rain, but his past remained ash. One evening, he halted at the spire's base, his palm flat against the coral. "I remember light, and someone too stubborn to die." She didn't touch him, didn't need to. Corvain's trial was a holographic farce. Zorine stood before the galactic syndicate, her symbiote crystal dulled. "I renounce the throne. Let Vhalar be my legacy." The council's murmurs drowned in the spire's broadcasted pulse, a planet's heartbeat, defiant, alive. They stood atop the spire at twilight, the horizon a tapestry of auroras. Kaden's fingers brushed hers, tentative. "You stayed. You asked. Did I?" The wind carried the answer, weaving through the coral, through the spores, through the quiet space between their hands.